Go. There we go. Almost forgot to put that on the correct place up there. Good evening. I guess I should put that in there, huh? That definitely makes rearranged there's something slightly in the studio today to make things a little easier for myself. Good, everybody. evening. Good evening. Here's some tracing paper. Where did I put that down at? Let's see. Look, actually, it's over here. Set that down. Alright, we got tracing paper. And a little tape to keep it from falling over. There we go. Probably better to have both of these up here. It's nice of the dog to come over and join me. Good evening, everybody popping in. Good evening. So let's get a separate piece of paper to throw under there when I need it. Good evening, everybody. There we go. Right, that foot. I'm glad you dig it. Thought I'd play around with some costume sketches tonight. Need to raise that one up a little bit there. Where did I put that eraser down at? There it is. Magic of tracing paper is, of course, you can just about erase everything off of it. So there's one. So I came up with a pose. Thought we would treat her like a paper doll, if nobody minds. Yeah, so I did kind of a rough sketch of the general body type, and then pulled out some tracing paper to sketch over. And I've got sometimes I'll do is I'll put more than one layer just so it's less transparent, but I pulled out a piece of white paper instead to throw this on top. But I thought this would be a handy, quick way of going about. Tracing paper is actually a pretty amazing tool, an artist toolkit. You can actually paint oil paint on top of it, and it won't bleed through. So if you're looking to like practice oil painting technique or layering effects or other things, it's a really cheap way of doing that. And can be really handy for that. Of course, you can erase just about anything off of it, even colored pencil. Maybe I should do these drawings in colored pencil on top, but yeah, I learned that a long time ago. I had this mentor, a guy named William Whitaker. If you Google him, you can find his images. He passed away a few years ago, but he showed me that because I was working out of his studio. It's actually excessively generous with his studio access. He was charging us almost nothing to be in there. And then, was showing us all of his stuff. He's kind of a classical painter type guy. And learned a ton about aesthetics and making things look good, not just be accurate or correct, whatever that means. But he let us hang out in his studio for really cheap for months and months until he threw us all out. But that was when I found out that he had some manic depression issues, which I was completely unaware of. And but he was still really, really generous. I can't ever fault him for the opportunity that he gave all of us to be in his studio with him so much. And came back later on. But he was trying to accomplish some things, and I think he was just investing more time than he had the energy and availability for. He used to be heavily kind of involved with the concept art community. He was the conceptart.org back when that was a site, major site. He would do workshops and things with them and comment on their forums and all that. But again, he was really, really generous. But I found that out because a former teacher of mine was mentored by him a long time ago, and there was kind of a crazy incident when the student, he really idolized his teacher, and so he wanted to paint just like him. And so one day he showed up with this painting. It's kind of the same kind of subject matter, the same kind of style as his mentor, which you might expect. And he put the painting down on the floor for him to look at, and the teacher, this William Whitaker guy, he laid down on the floor to look at the painting, and looked at it for a few minutes, then got up, went upstairs, and closed the door. And he didn't hear from his teacher for like 20 years after that. Which is kind of crazy. But that's when he kind of found out that he wasn't all 100% well. But you just you never know with people. But he said that was really heartbreaking for him at the time. And but again, the guy was really, really generous. I first met him because I saw his website. I was like, oh wow, he's really good. I wish I could learn from him or meet him. So I would just email people, and so I sent him an email, and he's like, oh, why don't you just stop on by sometime? And I was like, oh, that would be great. Where do you live? Turned out he lived like a mile away from where I was studying, which I had no idea. And so, but I learned a lot from Bill, including tracing paper. So it was really great for iterating too. So he was teaching us trying to draw more accurately, but also kind of more beautifully, like pay attention to the aesthetics of what we were drawing. So I'm not being so careful about here. It's just this pencil's a little too thick for that. But he had a tracing paper method where you kind of trace off the lines that were accurate onto the next sheet of tracing paper. So you would do your drawing, put a piece of tracing paper over it, sketch off the good stuff, and then keep going with the new piece of paper. And so on until you got a good drawing at the end. So I did a couple of drawings that way. But yeah, painting on tracing paper. I did that for a long time. I was in there like 40 hours a week, 5 days a week, and I definitely tried to learn as much as I could. Sadly, his website isn't running anymore. I guess his widow, didn't keep it up. I was living. Was I living? I think it was in Hong Kong. Maybe I have to double check. It might have been after that when he passed away. It was like 2017 or 18, I guess. And so I guess it was back in the United States, but wasn't able to get out for the funeral or any of that. But I'm curious to know if his wife kept the house and if the studio is still what it was. It would have been nice to check that out, Yeah, he had I think it was quadruple bypass surgery on his heart, so they had to go through, and I guess his heart was really plugged. His major arteries around his heart were all plugged up, so he went in for surgery, and he came out of it alive, but then a few days later passed away. I think it was just too much. But he was one of a number of art instructors I had that came from a tradition of a guy named Alvin Gittins, and he was a popular portraitist and art teacher, portrait teacher, figure drawing teacher in Utah for a number of decades, who trained in England in some kind of classical school there, or at the academy there when it was still more kind of figure narrative oriented. And kind of brought that out with him to the United States. And you can find some of his drawings online. They're really nice, but they definitely have that 80s flare in all their hair and things, just because it was, you know, when he was active. Gittens, Gittens, Alvin Gittens. Yeah, but he was very popular. He had very high, very high quality work. I didn't think his color in his painting was as good, but his figure drawings were really nice. Died of smoking in his 50s, so he should have still been alive when I was around learning back then, but he was already gone because he was a smoker. Died of lung cancer, I think. So I never got to meet him, but he definitely left an impact on a lot of the artists in that area. I don't think Alvin Gittin was very well known. William Whitaker would probably be more famous just because he was involved with the conceptart.org community pretty extensively. Like whenever they would have like their I forget the name of it, they have these big kind of workshop events in different places in the United States back then, and he would go to those and do, you know, workshops and things like that with them. Let's write this down. Yeah, but most of Bill Whitaker's stuff, it was kind of pretty girls hanging out with rugs and pottery. It's mostly what he did. And then the student he had, the one that I mentioned before, that was Don Siegmiller, and he was an art director at the company that did the expansion for StarCraft a long time ago. That studio eventually went under, but he was there, and then he was a teacher for a long time, you know, adjunct and then full time, and he had a significant health incident, and that kind of made him stop participating as much in art stuff. I mean, he still teaches and all that, but it kind of sucked a lot of his energy dry. Hello, Cartoony 177. Don Siegman. He wrote some books on digital painting, and he was again, he was really active online until he had this health issue where he basically he had a bacterial infection in his inner ear, and it caused him to lose most of his hearing and his equilibrium. So it was got to the point where he basically can't stand where he can't see his feet. So if he like stands in water or things like that, he can't see his feet. He starts to kind of lose his equilibrium. Kind of sends him into what's the word? It throws him off balance, basically. Yeah, it's a real shame because he was a really great guy, and he has both like his kind of fine art side, and then he's got his like concept art side, and so he like his really hilarious, often very crass sketches, and then like these very refined painting similar to the style of his mentor. He just teaches now at a community college. Teaches things that he likes to teach, but definitely slowed him down a lot. But he was one of those teachers that really focused on quality or quantity over quality. So you do a lot of paintings and drawings in his class, as opposed to a small number of ones you spend a lot of time on. You would do like a new painting every day. Plus, you'd be doing ones at home. It was pretty intense, but it's a good way of learning, getting in the mileage really fast. I'm more of a mixed person, where I like to do a lot of stuff with the students, but I also like to have things that are slower paced too during the semester. But yeah, he wasn't sick when I was his student, so it wasn't until later on. Then he got me hired on at the university he was at the time as adjunct before I became full time. So he was always someone who's really, really supportive of me, which I definitely appreciated and do. I do appreciate still, so. So, but I've definitely benefited from some really great people, and it's funny because I've met other former students of some of these people later on, and they didn't seem to appreciate them for what they got from those experiences. Don't recognize for some reason the generosity that they've received. Which I never quite understand. But oh well, you know. Oh, yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe there's some kind of misunderstanding that they had, or something along the way that kind of led them to feel differently, or not recognizing their own faults. Those kinds of things I think are where that kind of attitude kind of falls into place. So I'm friends with some of these people still, so I'm aware of their circumstances. No, I think, or maybe they said something to them that they didn't appreciate at the time. They felt was an insult, or didn't appreciate them the proper way. They felt like they should have been appreciated by their teacher, and therefore, they remain permanently offended. It's like I recall, I haven't looked in a long time, but I looked up. It was like years and years ago. I had this student, and he kept a blog, and it was interesting. He was commenting on the quality of different figure drawing teachers he'd had, including me, at this one university where I was first teaching, and he was lamenting that he only until this last teacher he had that he'd really learned a lot, that this teacher had really given him a lot, he'd learned a ton, and he'd had all these other people, including me and some other very, very good teachers, and he hadn't learned very much from them, he said, compared to this other teacher. I'm like, well, so I was curious to see how much he'd improved. Maybe there's something I could have done for him that this other teacher didn't, and I looked at his work and he was still not very good. So it was interesting because he felt like the volume of information he got from this teacher was really what was going to make the difference for him, and that's usually actually not the case. It's like even with my own students, I don't tell them everything that's wrong with their pictures. Usually I'm looking for 3 to 5 things that they can do in the moment, and I also recognize that the volume of information doesn't necessarily mean it's useful information for them at the time, and that they'll be able to do anything with it or remember it even for later on. But I just thought that was interesting. I'm not sure about that students. I don't remember who it is anymore, but a question came up. No questions yet, though. Interesting. So there's that. I've seen that kind of attitude, and there's not really much you can do about that. But it was just, he had this whole long thing about who had been really beneficial to him. I appreciate that. Glad you're digging it. Yeah, I think that's sometimes people don't recognize that's a fact for them. Like I was teaching a 100 level figure drawing class, and we're only going to be able to cover so many things in that amount of time that are going to make any difference for people that are new to figure drawing. And well, I've come to recognize, the students, they're there for their own reasons, their own interests. It just changed a lot about how I've taught things too. So I've, kind of in more of a recognition of that. I try to make sure that I'm planning my assignments and things in ways that serve what students think are their larger interests. Whether that's trying to get a job or master a skill that's going to get them closer to things that they want. And it's made a difference for how I teach, which wasn't as conscious a thing as I was doing back then as it is now. And so, I've definitely learned a lot as well since that. Since that was a long time ago. Like I think he was commenting on my teaching from back when I first started teaching. Um, so there's always that too. We got 3 on there. How many can we fit on this page? Do we think? Just have to make sure I give her something to stand on, right? Where the dog went. Well, have a good night. Time for the second siesta, right? I hear you. I took a good little nap this afternoon myself, so. Well, I'm using this pose kind of as a paper doll. So I'm just doing some costume explorations. This kind of is the general body type I'd like for the character. And so I'm kind of using that as my starting point. I'm this is the fourth one I've done since starting here, and I'm gonna whip out some ink and maybe do some detailed stuff on top of these with some fine liners. It doesn't need to move his thigh up though, so I've been tweaking that for all the drawings. Something more slimmer. So, yeah, so if you look over here, there's a few more. Yeah, so that's what we got going on here. Could we check over any other chats? How we feel about these four, huh? Put that down. This under there. I might get out some marker paper, which I haven't used in a while. Kind of ink these up a bit. Let's see. It's not the no see-through stuff. I want the somewhat see-through marker paper. Let's see. Marker paper. There we go. Let's see how this stuff's looking. I haven't used this stuff in a while. On some iteration tonight, so yeah, that'll do. Right through there, huh? Get some more tape out. Maybe I should get the light board out. I haven't used that in a while. Let's see how I feel about how this looks on top of there. Need to get it taped on anyway, right? That's what I think. So this is the marker paper. Needs to go on top. I mean, that might be good enough to see through for what I need. Alright. Let's see. We'll just go with the fine liners. Let's see, get that over there. Let's see, who do we got over here? 01, 03, 05, all right. Yeah, maybe I will get the light box out. I haven't used that in a long time. Let's see, I need, that plug should still be plugged in. So let's set this aside. And let's get the light box out, huh? After all, I bought it, might as well use it, right? It's been a while, but still down here. And I think it's plugged in too. Let's see. Oops, plugged in. Just need the tracing paper and the marker paper off. And I can turn this off. Up here. Let's get these all nice and taped down. Alright, and then let's see, this needs to be angled up a little bit. There we go. Put that sketchbook down there just so it's out of the way. got 0.3. That got rotated over. Let's put you back up, huh? There we go. Good evening, everybody popping in and out. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Bonilla. There you go. Pump the light a little bit. Good evening. Good evening. go with the marker up here, huh? Stop wigging out on me there. Little light table. Fine, all right. All right. Yeah, that added something to these. Hello, Trout House. Yeah, I'm just playing around. I started off with a pretty loose sketch, and then these are all done with pencil. that are down here over that loose sketch to kind of try out different costume ideas. And so now I'm just using the marker over the pencil to do kind of a more detailed rendering. So that's what we got going on here. I could have probably just done it over the paper, without the light box, but I think light box just makes it a little bit easier to do. So that's what I'm kind of thinking here. I guess my dog must have gone to bed because he's not in here anymore. Yeah, so that's what I'm kind of thinking here. Just so it's a little more definite for me. Let's see, that's thing in there. Nope. I don't want that. Music, there we go. What are we gonna listen to here? Good evening. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's nice to kind of preserve the process, right? So if I start off with, this, here's the drawing I started with. There we go. And then kind of use that pose as a paper doll and can draw over that with these fine liners or other tools. Yeah, especially if you want to keep that drawing for any reason. It seems like a handy way. At least to me. Maybe there's a smarter way of doing things, I'm sure, out there. I mean, I could do this all on the computer too, right? But I like to use different tools and kind of move around from thing to thing until I get what I want. Or you just like to try out different things. So yeah, it's like I tend to bounce around. If you look at like what I've been doing online, whether you go to my Instagram or look at what I've been posting over on YouTube or wherever else, I definitely like to vary things up a bit. Rather than just stick to one approach. Part of it's the things that I like to bring to my students. So I've definitely seen an increase in interest from students to use more traditional media. So analog media I think is a better word than traditional. But I've definitely seen like an increase of interest in that area. Talking to other professors who are teaching the same course that I'm teaching, just different sections of it, and they've said to me that about half their students are using traditional media or analog media. So yeah, I tend to demo in Photoshop for my students, but I was thinking maybe next semester instead of doing that, do all the demos live and with regular, pen and ink or markers or other media, just to kind of break things up for me a little bit. And show them some things that maybe they haven't considered too. Good evening. People popping in. That's right. Yeah, she's supposed to be a guide. It's part of a larger project I've been working on. Oops, don't drop the lid. Yeah, snacks are always very important. They fuel the Urkin Empire, right? Nothing more important than snacks for them. That's how their tallest maintain control. They've got control over the snack supply. So here's a question for you. Trout. Ever use fingerless gloves for drawing? I've never have. Seems like they would just get in the way. But I was wondering, just in general, because I've been trying to figure that out a little bit, and maybe I'm not the person that knows that answer, but trying to figure out better, more ways to make the stream more interesting to more people. And I wonder, if there's like really good streamers that are worth checking out, see what they do, and maybe some people I could learn a few things from. Also, doing more of the art stream thing, because I've been looking around at some of the people that are art streamers, but I thought be worth asking viewers what they think would be of interest. Alright, sticking at the outside. Yeah. I was always wondered, just because I do see other people out there doing stuff at most of them do digital stuff, of course. It's a lot easier to stream that on the computer, which I do sometimes as well. Oh, where are you going? But I like to bounce around with my media. But I'm always a little curious, what gets people watching versus not, So it's Wrong button. There we go. see, which one is left, which one is right? The dog's not in here. Guess he decided I was boring or he was tired. Pardon the cast of Joker 2? Is that what I should do? I haven't seen it. I know it didn't do very well. People were making fun of it. But then I've also heard other people say that people didn't get the point of it too. But I haven't seen it, so I can't say. I think it's coming to HBO Max soon, so I am curious to check it out just because it's so controversial. Wrong button. Makes me wonder if it's it's got to be better than that Cats movie they did a while back ago, right? Yeah. I did enjoy the first one, even though, really the first one was just a taxi driver warmed over in a lot of ways. Same time, I am getting kind of tired of all these realistic Batman shows. It would be nice to have a more of a comic booky Batman. I think, personally, but we'll see what we get from James Gunn, right? Yeah. Oh yeah, that could work too, right? There's a lot of stuff they could do. Um, you know, it's like everything these days is a remake or a prequel or whatever. It seems like come up with something new. I did see they're making live action How to Train Your Dragon. And my thought is just like, well, why? Like, if it's not going to add anything to the movie, then. I mean, and Disney's been doing that, and some of them have done really well. Like, that has surprised me. Some of them look really unwatchable to me, have done really well, like the Lion King ones. Um, which I thought wasn't going to do very well because it didn't look very good. But people liked it, and they've made a prequel to that about the daddy. Um, so they certainly haven't been checking with me. Well, especially these days, it seems like I think because of the way media lives longer, like in the sense that like it doesn't go away. So I don't know how old you are. I just turned how old did I turn? 46 this year. Um, Before the streaming stuff, stuff was on TV, and if you missed it, you just missed it. It might come back in the summer for reruns or something, but it was just gone forever unless it happened to come out on tape, years later or something like that. You could collect the VHS or something, and but if you missed the movie, it was just gone. You just didn't get to see it, or if you missed the TV show or that episode, it was just gone. So that's why TV shows are more episodic. So so you didn't have to catch every single one. So if you could watch a lot of the Star Trek Next Generation shows out of order, and it didn't really matter because they had it set up so that the stories the characters in the show sort of reset at the end of every episode. And or Seinfeld, do that. Sitcoms are like that a lot. And yeah, so you can go back and watch the older stuff, and a lot of people are doing that. So like Seinfeld has long legs, right? People are still watching it. It's a very valuable property, even though it hasn't been on TV in over 20 years. And and so that's kind of the way things are working now, where they're relying on and so I think that's affecting a lot of things like fashion, and not just media, but a lot of everything. Um, but yeah, but it did make for must-see TV back in the day. So if I wanted to watch X Files, I had to make sure I caught it. I was grateful later on when we could record things on VHS and preset things too, so you didn't have to miss it. Yeah, so I kind of nowadays, an entire season of a show is what you would get in a single episode in terms of the volume of events and content. Um, Feels like that way to me anyway. If I watch like a streaming season, it often feels almost similar to what you'd get in a single episode back in the day, rather than feeling like you're really getting more. It's like they're stretching out one story for a lot longer. I guess you can do a lot more depth that way, but I don't really know if you're actually getting that much more out of it. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely feel, I definitely really been kind of noticing that a lot. Um, the episode of the X Files that hooked me was about a guy who wakes up every like 70 years or something like that, or 30 years, to eat people's livers, and he would warp into weird shapes to fit into small places, and then go back into hibernation for 30 years or whatever. Um, but I remember watching that, and it felt like there was just so much going on in that single episode. Besides, getting me freaked out and thinking this was all cool at the same time. I've got a bunch of X Files comics from back then when it was still on TV. It kind of the show went downhill after the sixth season. That's when they kind of resolved the whole alien timeline. And I read somewhere that Chris Carter, he really didn't want the alien thing to be the focus of the show. He preferred the monster of the week stuff over the alien timeline. Like for him, that was just kind of background information, but it took over the whole show. And so you've seen him do that with like the recent seasons. I haven't watched the whole thing of where he brought back Gillian Anderson and what's his face. But they were basically all Monster of the Week things, or even the more recent movie they did was a Monster of the Week thing, because that's really what he wanted to do. He didn't really care that much about the alien stuff. Relatively speaking, he was all about the monster stuff. I miss those shows back then. He had a whole bunch of different ones. He did like one I really liked was Strange Luck. I think it only lasted for one season. The first season or two of Millennium was pretty great. I should watch that. I haven't watched that in a long time. Got the DVDs for it somewhere. Really? I met someone I think once who knew his mom knew Chris Carter or something, and but he also did a show called Space, I think. I never saw that one. I did see the Strange Luck thing was on YouTube for a while. Someone had uploaded all the episodes. But that show was cool because every episode is basically like a Rube Goldberg machine, where this guy is a photographer and he would go around, is there to photograph things as a reporter would, a journalist photographer, but he would kind of set in motion weird events that would all kind of link together at the end. Yeah, Millennium. I think the first season was really, really, really good. Second season was okay, and I think it had fallen apart by the third one, which is the final one. I've got I guess I've got the DVDs somewhere around here. I think I did put them into a digital format. Ripped them all a long time ago. I don't think I've seen them for sale online anywhere, or watchable anywhere. And then there was what was the other show? I liked a show called Due South. That was a great buddy cop show about a Canadian Mountie in Chicago, tagging along with a Chicago detective. He was like Mr. Squeaky Clean Boy Scout. So it was funny when they that's like the impression of a Canadian, right? But when they finally did go to Canada for a number of the episodes, like the Canadian Mounties and whatnot were shown just to be just as corrupt as the American side was. But he was there kind of assigned as a black sheep Mountie from Canada that people didn't want to work with, so he got assigned to this embassy thing in Chicago. Yeah, Due South. I really like Due South. There was a lot of good stuff back then. I'm trying to remember what else I really liked. What was that David Finch TV show? I'm trying to remember what that one was called. I've got that one. I don't think I've ever watched that one all the way through. Trying to remember what other shows Chris Carter did, because I think it was X Files, Millennium, the Strange Luck, and I think there was again a show called Space. And then I'm trying to remember if there was anything else he did that was around back then. Oh, Briscoe County Jr. That's right. I remember that one. With what's his face. That was a cool show. I forget why they stopped making that, because that one just kind of suddenly stopped. Of course, back then TV shows were kind of designed to be able to be stopped just about any time. Like when they did that cliffhanger with Picard becoming the Borg. That was like a very rare thing back then to have a cliffhanger at the end of a season. You didn't always know if a show was going to come back. They also had a lot more episodes. I think X-Files, like there was something like 20 some odd episodes per season. Okay, yeah, I remember it being like really cool, like sort of sci-fi cowboy show. That's like the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon. The first, like, I don't know if there was anything like about how it was filmed specifically, but the first 4 episodes are like way more dark and mature than the rest of the series. And I don't know if there's like a reason. I mean, obviously it was made before the rest of it was made, but because it got a lot more cartoony after that. But I remember really liking those first initial episodes. It was way more intense than the rest of the series. Yeah. Well, the first four, I think it had Krang and Shredder and the big, the little chumpy rat robot guys from Baxter. Wish I knew what happened to my original toys. I'm sure my mom just threw them out at some point, but I remember I had like a Baxter the Fly action figure. I think I've seen those actually for sale because they have all these, again, retro toys, bringing them back. I remember seeing all the He-Man ones on sale, at Walmart or Target or whatever. And of course, the movie was super intense. I remember when that came out. We were all super excited about that. I haven't seen it in a long time. I don't know if it's still any how well it holds up. Yeah, the Mousers, Technodrome. That sounds right. With Krang. Yeah, I have to go back and watch. I think I've bought it on iTunes or something a long time ago. Um, I should put that on sometime. Because I remember it being pretty intense. Like Raphael was like really dark in there. At least that's what my memory tells me. There's something about all the puppets, right? Just that they're like really there. They're not wearing weird suits, and it's like the newer Marvel movies when they switch to the nano helmets and everything. That just really annoying because it's clearly like a cost cutting measure. It's not really there to. I mean, it does amaze people to a certain degree, I guess, but I miss like the Iron Man suit, taking itself apart and putting itself back together and all that, and yeah, just the way they were getting to talk and all that. I mean, they could do an even better job now, in spite of the narrative issues that Disney Star Wars has. That that I definitely don't like. Their animatronics are really impressive. They're using a lot of kind of real things. Um, I think J.J. J.J. Abrams kind of got that going, kind of an answer to the prequels. People were excited about his movies initially because oh wow, he's making real sets and real robots and real aliens, and they're all kind of really there for a lot of them. But I'm glad they're doing that. What you looking at there, Bosch? Nice of you to join me. Dog decided to emerge from the other room. Hello, Bosch. And join me. You're seeing that, I think, a lot of movies. People kind of going back to the. They're definitely blending things, but a move to kind of go back to original, like real sets and real miniatures. You see that saw that a lot with Blade Runner 2049. A lot of the buildings and cars and everything, they were really there. Like they built the police station as a miniature set. It's a miniature building that they, threw fog machines in front of. And I just think there's something, that adds a lot to making it a more believable experience for for us watching the movie. Yeah, the giant head in Prometheus. That's the thing. Is like Prometheus. It is a mess narratively, but it's a gorgeous movie. Um, there was. I like it just for all the production design. Yeah, it's definitely a gorgeous movie. One of the other trends I really don't like in kind of modern entertainment is how they try to connect everything together. I blame George Lucas for that, for him way he handled the prequels. There was the Chosen One stuff that he did in there that's kind of been pumped into a lot of movies, but he also kind of had this thing where everything had to be connected. So Darth Vader's really the one who made C-3PO, or R2-D2 was there the whole time, and that kind of storytelling I think is just really annoying, and it kind of makes the universe feel really small that they're building. Um, yeah, so I just think that was kind of a mistake in I think in X-Files too, where they made the smoking man his real dad. Yeah. Yeah. It's just like everybody happens to be, in the same little place, and they're running around the same little town, as if the whole galaxy is just the smallest little place in the world. Um, it's all really convenient, right? And my view of the Jedi was way different too. I kind of thought of them, from the original movies, being more like that guy from the old Kung Fu. Hello, over there, Gorwedo. Kind of thought of them like being like that guy in that old Kung Fu TV show where, he was just kind of this. I thought the Jedi were kind of these old masters of their craft or whatever, that would kind of wander from place to place or were very isolated. I didn't think of them as being like a well organized military force or police force. I know that's what he did with them in the books and things later on, but just like watching the original movies, you kind of got the impression that they were more like, these monks, and would travel, and kind of, do things when they were in different locations. Which I think would have been way more interesting than that. But you can find, I've got a digital version of it off of old Comixology. But there's a comic book graphic novel based off of Lucas's original script, and he definitely wanted a lot more politics and all that. Nick Gorwed, huh? So he definitely had like a larger political thing in his head he wanted to do. But I think I would have loved to have seen it as more of that kind of, they're going to be kind of more of these independent monks, less attached to a larger organization. More what do I do? I am a full-time professor at Virginia Commonwealth University. I've worked in games and as a freelancer mostly, illustration studios and things like that, galleries. I've been kind of all over the place. A lot of freelance for games over the years. And of course, I like the Force being a more subtle thing rather than it, superhero stuff bouncing around. I remember people thinking the Force, the prequels were great because you saw really intense Force stuff, but I always liked it when it was more subtle and less superpower kind of based. They really amped it up in the more recent movies with Miss Rey Palpatine. Oh, some people, different attitudes about that, right? But yeah, I've taught I like to say I've taught everything that doesn't move. So this is actually year 20 since I started teaching. So I started teaching figure drawing just before I graduated my bachelor's in 2004. That's the thing I've taught the most. Currently I'm a assistant professor of concept design at the university I'm at now. And I teach concept drawing mostly. I'm trying to advocate for a more complete and more focused program for the students within an illustration track that we're trying to advocate for. And so kind of working on that here. VTuber projects, huh? I've noticed, I was doing a little research. I was asking somebody here about, ways of trying to, generate more interest for the stream, just so there's, more people in here rather than just, a few scattered across some different platforms. Because I'm over on multiple ones. In fact, I think you're the first real person from Kick that's showed up in my streams. Usually it's a spammer letting me know I can join their Discord. Which I'm pretty sure would just get me in trouble if I ever followed through on any of those. But yeah, but I've seen a number of the art streamers. There tend to be a lot of kind of VTubers among those. The fake faces, which is interesting, Not something I would ever do myself, but except maybe as a joke. But yeah, it's interesting that that's a popular thing. Well, I'm sure they do. I mean, it's probably a lot of work, right? Putting together those. Putting together a full package for all of that, I'm sure is seems like it'd be a lot of work based off the little bit I've seen. Well, I finished off this set here. There's the pencils under there. Well, give the people what you want, and you'll never go hungry. Yeah, I've when I was in school was when things were transitioning to digital, and basically, none of my professors were, very skilled in the digital stuff at all, so I had to learn a lot of it on my own. I did have one professor who was really great. We were talking about him earlier in here. He was an art director at a video game company. He did the StarCraft expansion way back when, and put this away, I guess. And but he had some health issues, so he hasn't really been as active online due to that. But he was the one that I kind of learned a lot of digital stuff from. So I'm kind of in that era was kind of mixed, but a lot of like the concept art, traditional media, markers and spray paint, not spray paint, airbrushing and all that. I never learned because my teachers were all very much in the traditional art. They were all illustrators, but they were all kind of publication illustrators, and so they did oil painting and acrylic and watercolor and that kind of thing, not marker and airbrushing and those things like that. 9 o'clock. Now we've got another hour in me. I've worked a little bit with Riot Games. I was on some animatics that never got made. It was a project that got canceled. So I don't know if that counts or not. And then worked with Disney Interactive on Toy Story 3, the video game. So that, and that eventually became Disney Infinity, which was a popular video game project. The company I worked with was Avalanche Studios. They're most famous right now for working on that Harry Potter game that came out, but I didn't work on that. But a bunch of people I know would have, that are still there. But I haven't worked for there in a very, very long time. Yeah, back when Disney used to have game studios. So, but they got rid of them. I think it's 5 or 6 years ago. They kind of dropped all of them, and so that's when Warner Brothers picked up Avalanche. In the wake of that, they bought that studio and the artists that were there. Yeah, so I worked for them before going to grad school back in 2008. That's when I went to grad school. Right, it was like a temporary freelance thing that I did. Worked a little bit with EA. They had a studio near where I was living at the time. And then, yeah, but again, most of what, freelance-wise, it's mostly been small projects. I worked on the first animated comic book by Ryan Woodward called Bottom of the Ninth. It's an iPad app you can still get. It was never complete, but well, in terms of concept stuff, you need to have the right kind of portfolio. And that's been a big point of discussion lately, right? Especially with AI and all that kind of coming into, popular consciousness, I guess. But what a lot of what needs to be done for concept art is a lot of drawing and iteration, which is actually something AI can't do very well, at least from what I understand. It has a hard time kind of making real variations, that the kinds you need for concept. And a lot of concept is just drawing and iterating. So kind of being able to demonstrate that's really important. But yeah, I think a really good guide. Actually, maybe it's a good spot to take a little break here anyway, since I finished off that page. But I like to show this one book. Let me pull it out here real quick. I think it's one of the first books to come out about concept art. Where did I put it? Not there. Is it up there? Nope. I thought it was down here. Where did I move it over there? Nope. Is it down here? Skillful Huntsman, where are you hiding, Skillful Huntsman? Oh, there it is. I found it. Well, depends on where you're working, living, right? But one thing that's nice about concept art is you can really work it from anywhere. Let me move this out of the way. I was just going to sketch some faces for the next little while. For this book here, is that visible? A little too bright on the cover. But this book came out in 2004, I think. It was right when I was graduating. It was actually kind of perfect timing. There we go, Skillful Huntsman. And what's great about this book is the names down here. These Mike Kangley, Mike Amado, Felix Yoon, these were all students at Art Center, and this was their teacher, Scott Robertson. And he created this imprint, Design Studio Press, and they do a lot of really great books that relate to concept art. But what this does, this was their senior project when they were graduating, and they basically took the story of the Skillful Huntsman. It's a grim fairy tale. So this is them over here. There's the teacher. He's older now, of course. This is a long time ago when this came out. But here's the story. Yeah, it's really short, but basically they went through and they concepted out the locations using these silhouette methods that are still, that became popular actually, I think, because of this book. But they went through and kind of concepted out, these are all variations and iterations of their huntsman character, and has a little commentary on the side, kind of over here, what the student thought, what the teacher thought of what they were doing. And a lot of it's traditional meaning, pencil and pen, but there's also Photoshop and markers and that kind of thing going on here. But they kind of show the process they would go through to come up with these different ideas. So you look here, there's the silhouette, and then the variations they drew on top of that silhouette, and then they could expand on that design as they went forward. And again, a lot of this stuff is still used by people. Here's brush pen up here. But anyway, they go through and they concept out the different characters. Here's some Photoshop, shape play going on here. Oh yeah, God of War art book. I'll look up that. There's a whole bunch of really great art books out. I need to spend like $5,000 on all of them. But again, locations. And so they kind of set theirs, I think, in a sci-fi space instead of where it was. I like these thumbnails they do here, and then these ones right here, these kind of more tonal ones. What they did, and I actually used this technique for a number of years myself. Basically, you would take your thumbnail and then you would photocopy it a lot larger, and then put graphite on it, and then pick out the lights with the eraser, and then put things back in with pencil. It's a really great technique. I would do that, and then I would scan that in, and then do some Photoshop on top of it. But there's another good example of that right there. Let me put something behind this so I can prop it up and get some of the glare off of it. And push it back up. And let's give the there we go. Give the Instagram viewers a little bit better view when they come in. But again, so it's kind of that sort of thing. Marker sketches over here on the left side. But you can still get this book. It's in paperback, and I definitely, highly recommend it. Vehicles and transportation, forests, and all that. Here's an example of that with the thumbnails up at the top. See if I can get that. There we go. So there's the drawn thumbnail, and then there's the tonal one. And again, they're using graphite for that. And then there's the digitally painted one over here of that. Yeah, again, you can get it in. This is a hardcover. You can't really. It's really expensive to buy that now, but it does still come out, and it's still available in paperback. There's some guns, so it's a whole thing, and it's not really instructional, but you can definitely see what the students are doing. And again, one of the things I really liked about this book is it's all student work. So I would like to bring it into my classroom to show my students, because I'm like, hey, these are students just like you. You could do this too. And so that's why I kind of like this one over some of the more professional books. I have a bunch of those too, but I really like showing this one to my students. So here's some more process. Loose sketch, tonal sketch, graphite, and then the finished digital one down here. I guess it's a less of a how-to book, but it does show a really good example of building out what a really strong portfolio. So here we are getting into the princess. I think this is the king. So they just kind of go through it. The cook hut. I forget what the story. How I should reread the story. It's been a while since I've read it, but just tons of really, really great stuff in here. I'm actually thinking my concept course that I do for my university students is somewhat similar, because I learned a lot from that book. And been thinking about, because I have a teaching website, myartprofessor.com, and I've been thinking about kind of adapting that course into one for that site. I do have some of the things I've done for previous schools up there as courses, but and it definitely has some of that type of information, but it's not quite the same. But I'm thinking about taking what I've been teaching the last year and a half here and adapting it into something a bit more formal for that site. Because the lessons that I've recorded, say, for my students are just me lecturing in class. And I record, that on the computer. Though I did find I found a number of them, but I thought I'd gotten rid of all of them, but I found a day of lectures where I had accidentally hit the mute button on the computer I was recording with, so it recorded the video but no audio, which is kind of funny, I guess, because I like to have that available for the students after class to be able to figure things out or reference later on. Apparently I'm the only one that does that at the school, but yeah, it's good. Thinking about putting that up there. I want to finish the original courses that I have, so I've got like one more to finish up, and then I thought about doing some kind of figure drawing thing as well, because I have stuff for that, but I want to kind of formalize it a little bit better than where it is right now. That's all over at that teaching site, myartprofessor.com. So I've mentioned other people in here before. I've been distracted by another project the last couple of years, 3 years really, and so I'm kind of back focusing on that now that other project is done and less of a distraction. Well, have a good night. Yeah, it's starting to get late here too. 9:30 or 9:15, I guess. But I'll probably be on for the 45 minutes, and then I'll be gone. I've been trying to come on in the mornings, and that way I can. Because I do have like a warm up morning study I do, so I've been doing those live as well. So, definitely watch for that. Have a good night. And a lot of my students were excited about the Fallout, I think it was the Fallout New Vegas book, which I guess you can still get for a reasonable price. I've seen it kind of its price bounce up and down a lot on Amazon. I think there's someone just trying to sell an expensive copy, and other people will pop in with cheaper ones. Yeah, it was interesting. I went to Lightbox and went to a couple of presentations with Doug Chang. You know, he's been the creative director at Lucasfilm for a long time. You know, going back to the prequel days. He's been, you know, an active, you know, concept artist and director for that stuff since the '80s, and he was saying he likes to see like traditional media drawings and sketchbooks over portfolios of finished work because he likes to see how people think, and so there's too many digital tricks these days to hide, you know, how you actually work and how you think. And so he likes to see that physical work in a sketchbook with pen and paper and pencil. Let's see. Some music would be good. Hello, the Pel Pal. How you doing? You missed the book share. Missed book club, if you will. So while I was drawing, here, let me grab this. I was sketching this before. So I made a figure here, did some rough sketching in pencil, and then was doing this, inking over the top of it. So got about half an hour before I'm going to call it a night, and so I thought I would just draw some faces over here. So that's what we were working on before. Or I was working. I don't know what everybody else is doing, but it's one of the things I've been trying to. So I was saying before, this is my year 20 since I started teaching a long, long time ago, and 20 years ago, I guess, slightly more now, but mostly figure drawing. Actually, I think I'm pretty good at figure drawing, but the one thing I neglected though is like a lot of character design focused stuff, and so I've been trying to spend a lot more time drawing people out of my head, and also expressions and things like that over the last year and a half. And kind of, get a better technique going for that for myself. But yeah, then lately I've been getting up in the morning to do my morning studies online as well. So I've been doing those for a while, but got those study streams where I've been coming on in the morning, just looking at areas that I think could use some updates or better understanding. And there's definitely a ton of great resources out there, and I want to take advantage of the books that I've acquired. I've got a ton of art books that are all behind me, and I'm trying to better take advantage of all that knowledge and information, rather than just being I like the picture and then move on from there. What can I learn from these things? Yeah, hair's an animal, that's for sure. A lot of it has to do with just kind of separating things into major, one large kind of major shape, and then breaking it up into medium and then small ones. And if you can get that down, then it can work really, really well. But it does take practice, and there's a lot of different hair out there, right? Shortcuts. You've got European hair. Oh, thank you, Dave. Take it your back, or is that from before? But long straight hair. There's African hair. There's Asian hair. Thicker and thinner hair. So there's a lot of hair out there, if you will. Oh, it's kind of like you think of it like ribbons, right? So if you've got, a ribbon, gives give the ribbon some thickness. You're just kind of creating different segments of ribbons, and then you can break that into smaller hairs when you've got that ribbon in there. If you're doing that type of hair, but who doesn't love that kind of hair, right? Yeah, but it does take practice. And there's a lot of really good information out there about different hairstyles and types. Curly hair, of course, is a whole other beast. If you want to do like super permy curly hair, you know, like my mom would have had in the '80s and early '90s. That's a whole other thing. But again, that also kind of goes back to maybe what you see from African hair when it gets growing pretty good. Get those froze. Yeah, it's a whole animal, right? But it's all interesting. It's all good. It's all worth the time to examine. There's Alphonse Mucha hair, right? The Czech artist, the father, the granddaddy of Art Nouveau, I guess. But it's definitely a whole thing. And again, it's just part of the fact that there's an endless supply of things worth learning. So like so for me, I hadn't focused too much on the character stuff until recently. Mostly focusing on environments and creatures and equipment and things like that, and vehicles even. But decided it was time to jump into that. And I think I've definitely improved as I've made that a focal point of my own study. Let's see. Let's get through that glare for me. $9:30, huh? Richmond or well, I would pick one. Well, thank you there, Lotus. Seems like a good night for something or other, right? Yeah, rhythm. Well, rhythm is. We'll have to ask yourself what rhythm is, right? And rhythm is variable repetition. So like being able to repeat. So like this line right here is the same kind of as this line over here, but they're different lengths. And then this length here is different than that length, so it kind of creates that rhythm by having it similarities, but then having variations. So the similarities are what give things order and structure. So it's just like musical notes, like the length of notes. There's only so many of them, and they get repeated in different ways. Which is why we use a lot of musical terms in visual art, right? Like rhythm or tone, or even like beats show up as a word in just like story beats and things show up as a word when talking about art stuff. We tend to use a lot of those musical color notes, right? So that's all really the rhythm is. It's repetition with variation within that repetition, and it does take practice to kind of learn to get it down, but it's definitely doable. If you can tap your foot to the beat of a song, well, asymmetry is different than that. It's sort of like that. It's like, but it's finding that kind of repeating pattern, and then giving it variation within itself. And often that deals with like proportional relationships of spaces. So people like to space thing out. Like the most common one for doing that is probably the most famous one. It's not the most common, but most famous would be the golden rectangle. The spiraling rectangle. So it's kind of spirals in. That's a very famous one. So you've got, this square right here is based off this short side over here, but it kind of spirals in on itself using similar spaces. Yeah, I'm streaming on multiple platforms, Lotus. I'm not sure if you're which one you're coming to, but yeah. So it's like here I'm seeing, if you look at the outside shape of this head down here, I was doing this line right here, but then I'm creating this longer, it's kind of straighter here, and then curved here, and then I could straighten out and go curved, and that's a kind of rhythm, right? So straight, curve, straight, curve is a kind of rhythm that you can create in art, just as a very simple trick. Straights versus curves, and alternate them one after the other. But you can also put them at opposite sides of each other. So if you're doing doing some kind of drawing, if you look for a straight on one side and a curve on the other, and then a straight and then a curve, you're creating a rhythm going up and down that line, but also across the form. And that's another kind of rhythm that you can do. And that one's actually pretty easy to do, to keep track of. It's really handy in figure drawing because it shows up naturally to a certain degree, because of the way the bones and the muscles interact with each other across the form, and kind of in line with itself. Creates kind of a natural straight versus curve rhythm. Oh yeah, so you're on two of them there, Lotus. You're not. What about? Oh, there you are over on Kick. See, there's three of them. But are you on D Live or Instagram? Those are the other two. I do Rumble, but I guess you have to have a certain number of followers before you can live stream from there. Yeah, I thought I'd give it a go. At least you don't appear to be a spam bot. Usually on Kick, I just get people. I get people telling me to join their Discord, and 95% sure that's spam, right? Now I think Bridgman, he talks about that alternating straights and curves thing as his one of the things he does for rhythm, is looking for those alternating straights and curves, because you'll see that in his work, and that's a really basic one to apply. It's not that hard to do. Just have to pay attention. And you'll nail that one down pretty easily. Something I do with I've done with my figure drawing students is emphasize that at a certain point. It kind of happens naturally because the way I handle the form figure, where they use cylinders and ovoids, and so the cylinders have straight sides, and that's usually kind of you handle that for most of the interior forms of the limbs especially. And then they use ovoids for things like the rib cage and the head and the pelvis, and then it also becomes inserts for the shoulders, the calf, the upper arm, and even the thigh to a certain degree. And so that naturally creates that straight versus curved alternation that happens. But it can happen in multiple. Kick is a place to find niche artistic endeavors, huh? Yeah, I'm not sure where it's best to be, so I figured it's always a good idea to reserve your name, right? On any platform. And since it was easy to set up the streaming to kind of work all together, and I found a free option for the multi-chat. I figured it was wise just to get that all set up so it works together. Can't hurt, I think. I am on the East Coast, so I live in Richmond, Virginia. Actually, I've been on the East Coast for a while now. I was down in Florida for a few years with Ringling College of Art and Design. Teaching perspective drawing and figure drawing for coming up here. And I was out on the West Coast briefly in October for Lightbox, and that was a really great experience. So, yeah, but definitely out on the East Coast now. I have periodically, trying to do my research. I've checked on like Kick and D Live, sometimes different parts of the day to see what kind of live streams are happening for art stuff. I don't really see very much. Yeah, mostly video games and that kind of thing. Um, for reference in that, I think it's best to study from life. So if you're doing figure drawing and you're really trying to kind of do a deep dive into it, there's something about being in the presence of a real person. But I also think photographic reference is really helpful, and shouldn't be ignored either. But I think if you can, I would definitely try to get in front of the live model as much as you can. There's something about being in front of like a living, breathing human being, who does not sit perfectly still, that teaches you a lot about the human structure, because you can see the muscles moving or the fat moving on top of the muscles, or you can see the hair, moving in the air, and there's something about that kind of level of vitality that I just don't think you can get from a photograph. And the other thing you run into with photographs is there's a lot of distortion from lenses, and unless you draw a lot from direct observation, it can be hard to overcome the effect that those lenses have, especially if you're not aware that they're there. So if you're, one of the things you'll see kind of in photographs of like supermodels, or even just like models or girls on social media, is often they'll photograph themselves in a way that makes their legs look really, really long. And that has to do with how the lenses in your camera, on your phones especially, distort the view. And so if you're not aware of that, it can really affect your perception of what people actually look like. And of course, realism isn't always the goal for every artist, which is fine, but I think it's helpful to kind of go in there and really understand how things really work. And so that's what I think. So I think photographs are good for what they're good for. And I certainly use photograph reference all the time, but I just don't think there's any substitute for the real thing. Yeah, there's a lot of filters and things that perfect things or distort things. AI processes that are slapped on top. This is a whole other can of worms, right? The issues that AI causes. It's interesting, we've had some controversy at my university about that recently, and one of the things that's come out of that is how much students want absolutely nothing to do with it. I don't think the other professors realized, the ones who were kind of more open-minded about it, so not me, I don't think they realized how much the students hate it, how much they want nothing to do with it. So It's been an interesting effect to kind of see. We'll see kind of how their opinions getting back to them, the difference that it makes. So I should have put that up a little bit higher. Yeah, so I've generally kind of kept my opinions on it fairly moderated at the school, just so, because I like students to be able to have their own opinions and say what they think without me, jumping in too soon about certain subjects, especially if they fall outside of the specific content of the class. So, like, the only thing I'd said, about AI to my students up until that point was that I think it gets in the way of the learning outcomes for that class, and therefore it is forbidden expressly. Like, they can't use it for reference, they can't use it, obviously, to generate anything. It has listed as plagiarism in the classroom. And yeah, it's hard to say. It's I don't know, because I think a lot of what people think AI is capable of, or what they think it will be capable of soon, is, I think, not realistic. And so even on that level, like, even if like, I think it can hurt people's creativity, like their ability to be creative. Like, it'll limit their development, or atrophy it, even, retard it, cause it to go back. And I think if any artist comes to rely on that, I think that's a significant harm that will come to them directly by adopting it. But it's like I call it a Dunning-Kruger box, kind of a play off of the Skinner box concept, which it also is kind of a Skinner box. Social media is definitely a Skinner box, but yeah, well, certain aspects of machine learning have been around a long time. Like, your spam folder on in your email is a kind of AI machine learning tool, because it learns to read what's in your emails and then decide what you probably will actually read and what you won't. And it tries to pre-anticipate that a lot, and so you often have to, like, check it to make sure it hasn't eaten something that you actually wanted to keep. But the generative stuff's, like, relatively new. But again, there's a lot of limitations on it in terms of what they think it's going to be capable of. I mean, a lot of people were convinced 8 or 9 years ago that we weren't going to be driving cars anymore, and that level of responsiveness for these automated driving systems, and that's a relatively simple system when compared with a lot of other things, still hasn't come to be, and probably won't. Yeah, well, the other thing you get with the AI stuff is, like, you don't know what you're really looking at. So I don't use it for anything. Like, I don't want it. I don't want to look at it. I hate seeing it. I hate that it shows up in my searches for things. And so like it plays no part in anything that I do. I get annoyed when Photoshop starts telling me to start using their tools. I'm like, no, nope, no, thank you. Period. Um, so right now they're pointing this out to some people, but there's news stories where basically Microsoft wants to reopen the 3 Mile Island nuclear facility for their exclusive use to power their AI systems by itself. Facebook was in talks with one particular place where they were going to build a data center next to it, which got put on hold because there's a rare type of bee that lives there, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, I've been kind of getting, because I adopted, again, I think I mentioned this before, but I adopted digital art pretty early, early on, even before it was everywhere. It was, my teachers were all traditional illustrators. And I've gradually kind of come to the point where I want to finish this portfolio project I'm working on, but I really don't want to do that much digital art, if I can avoid it. Maybe some of the 3D stuff just because it's, newer tools for me as a reference source and kind of concepting source. Like, a lot of the Blender stuff is kind of interesting, like grease pencil and some of the concepting tools that I have for use of it in there. But I think as soon as I'm done with this portfolio project, I think I'm going to shift to all traditional media as much as I can. Oh, almost time. Got 4 minutes, and then I'm going to call it a night. Get my dog his evening yummy. Gets a frozen broccoli. Sorry, I'm saying it slowly so I don't wake him up. He knows that word. A Leo Brock. But he gets one of those before bed. Yep, have a good night. I'll be back probably tomorrow morning, I think. And probably in the evening again as well. All right. Well, All right, well, I'm going to call it there. So thanks to everybody that came in. I appreciate it. I'll be back tomorrow. And see, hopefully first thing in the morning. I'm trying to set my alarm so I get up a more specific time rather than just when the dog decides it's time to get out for his constitutional. But again, thanks to everybody that came in, and talk to you next time.